All right, next up is from Virgil. This is what I want from Master Mode's deep dive. He put based in the title and Star Citizen. Virgil, you don't get to decide if your opinion is based. The community does. You fucking goofball. All right, let's watch this. Dope intro, yeah.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today marks the first video of a small series I'm
Let me know
working
about volume,
in regards
guys.
to my personal master's
trying.
feedback. I plan on breaking down my feedback into
that good?
small digestible videos rather than just a gigantic thesis that's 3 hours long. Just for people to understand my background in all of this, and if they're new to the channel, I'm one of those sweaty degenerate arena commander pilots, but I like to think my takes are broader than just the cockpit of a Gladius or another light fighter.
I will say that Virgil and I have had countless conversations, whether it was on Answer the Call in the public or just DMs or voice calls or whatever, just talking about the video game aspects of Star Citizen. Nothing about combat. I'm not a combat player. I'm not very good at the game, right? So, like, I can't relate to Virgil very much when it comes to like PvP takes or maybe not PvP takes, but like actual PvP skill. But the things that we do relate to is that we absolutely want very similar games, in the sense of we want games where people can have fun and that want to go out and take risks and go into risky areas and risk and reward. And that's, I guess, a more Eve light experience is sort of, to give a TLDR of every conversation we've ever had. I don't think anybody wants Eve. Eve, like a clone of Eve and spreadsheets and, yeah, like, you know, obviously we want the tactile universe and all those things, but just options of maybe little bits of territorial control or resource control and fighting over those things, and you know, maybe like a little bit of high level politics between orgs and things like that, right? So that would be like the quick TLDR of a lot of the conversations that we've ever had about the video game. And in order for that to exist, you have to have a very healthy casual community, right? People who don't necessarily participate in those battles and in those wars, because if there are ever player-run factories, if there are ever player-run bases that create things, who are you going to be selling those risk and reward type materials or items or crafting to? You're going to be selling them to that really happy and you know, casual player that's, you know, not participating in any of that at all, right? So that's kind of the idea behind that. But that's a lot of the conversations we've always had, to just kind of give that context of my relationship with Virgil is, and how I relate to him is that we have had plenty of discussions and about what we want as a video game. So if you're ever looking at his takes as solely selfish, I think you're wrong. But I will always put the caveat that I do believe that many PvPers, obviously it's very hard to remove yourself completely from the scenario, and they want certain things because it's fun to be really good at the game and be significantly better than everyone else. And that's sort of where we are now with the current flight model. And a lot of the complaints about master modes is it's making things too easy for bad players or whatever. So
Anyways, let's get this video off the pads. What do I want out of master modes? Number 1, fleet battles at scale. Now, if you watch my previous videos, then you probably know my background. On this channel, it's hardcore PvP through the cockpit of the light fighter.
Yep.
But it's surprisingly not why I backed Star Citizen. The reality is which some of you may not like, but I'm actually here for the EVE Online 2.0, or the bigger picture, if you will. I'm here for the future of huge battles at scale.
I wasn't sure if you would talk about
ships and going head to head with other organizations. Even the logistics that comes with maintaining a fleet. Coming on now 6 years, I've done nothing but fly a handful of fighters, day to day, seeking out small skirmishes, and if I'm lucky, finding a fight of the medium scale. But I'm ready for the game to go past just X-Wing versus TIE fighters. I'm ready for the light fighter meta to only be an aspect of the game, rather than the entire game. And for that, we need a balanced ecosystem, where multiple ways to approach combat are both meta and competitive with one another.
Oh, you
for
can't
this,
say the
meta
meta
fighter
word,
gameplay
though.
must be brought into line
There's not going to be a meta in Star Citizen, though. You can't say that
with
word.
the rest of the game. Heavy fighters, multi-crew, all the way to capitals, it's time for space combat to encompass and include all forms of combat competitively. It's time for things to get interesting, and the game to become what was promised, and not require us to pretend or roleplay that more than a handful of these ships are actually effective.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing right now is if you're like decent at the game, you're going to be better than 90% of the pilots you're coming up against in any combat scenario in the PU. Definitely not an Arena Commander. But so you can pretend that a ship is useful. But if they ever developed the game and actually gave you a real thing to fight over and a real content and real territory control where people would actually take these things seriously and not role play or not and not that role play isn't serious. I'm sure that people take that the wrong way, but if there is ever a scenario where we do get some aspect of EVE, then people are going to learn how to min-max more, and they're going to want to win and not lose. Where right now, I think everybody's just kind of playing the game for fun. But I think when you want to achieve a win in the actual video game, you're probably going to only fly what would be considered the meta at that time. So everybody would be flying light fighters, or I guess to some extent the F8 Lightnings and stuff like that in today's meta, right? So that is when there are actual things to achieve. What would the game look like? It would look very much like Arena Commander, where there's just 3 ships flying around.
Number 2, team fights and battles to happen across immersive distances and not rely purely on UI elements to show the combat, but instead everything we've seen in the movies.
What does immersive distances mean?
CIG needed to significantly arrest the number one culprit of this, drift without intent. By bringing these ship speeds forcefully down on players to operate in combat, we're finally starting to see what Combat Star Citizen was always planned to be.
Drift without intent is and I never heard it described as something before. I never heard it like have a name like you just gave it. Drift without intent is the single culprit of me hating flying in this game. Period. Like, you press W or you press down on your pedals and you hit shift or whatever, right? And you boost, and then all of a sudden I have no control over my ship at all, because you're just going at such insane like G's and speeds and all these things. So yeah, like I'm not a good pilot, so that drift without intent really, really hurts me and makes things super complicated for me personally, and it's part of the game that I really, 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 really struggle with, and it's why I don't enjoy flying.
Flying between asteroids, stations, and true dogfighting in space. X-Wings up against TIE fighters, for example. Your teammates in the backdrop, and overall space battles happening around you as you fly through it. Finally, a truly immersive experience. Master Modes has without a doubt delivered that. But is it practical when it comes to the PU? A question we're yet to find out while limited to the squad battle experimental mode. Number 3, out of combat.
There's no master modes, large ships. I guess the largest one right now would be the Vanguard, right?
Nav mode limitations. Now here's where the community will truly be at contention, but it has to be said. How does the SCM pilots before combat catch the nav mode pilots? For example, a pirate quantum jumps into your organization's mining operation. If he's flying around at the speed ceiling of 1200 in nav mode, is he just running around doing loops without a care in the world? What is the mechanic to make him engageable? How is that dealt with?
I mean, if you're jumping in on a mining target, there's a 0% chance you're going to be able to fire your mining laser while in nav mode. Therefore, you know, if you're an actual pirate and you're not coming with something that would disable a quantum drive and disable the ability to go into nav mode, what are you doing? I'm not sure why this is even a question, personally.
Can a player remain in nav mode for free and for a long duration? How does a fight even start?
I think another one of the things that will likely get addressed is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that there's some what is it called? The not EMP, the quantum enforcement stuff. When you pull a ship out of quantum, I believe they currently are pretty far away from you. When you pirate somebody, you're somewhat far away from them as well. I imagine at some point in this game's future, the ability to like jump much closer to somebody or be on top of somebody, given that the ship speeds are going to be much lower, I imagine whatever the ranges in which you pull people out is going to be a lot closer to you than before. So when you pull somebody out of quantum, they might be like brought to you in a way, than instead of left in a certain area. My guess is much closer. Yeah, like 15 kilometers is pretty typical for a snare. I cannot see where a world in which they would keep that as the standard after master modes is a thing, right? Because you imagine everything about the Mantis has to change, and that would definitely be one of them. But if you're jumping a mining operation, you know the location of it, so you need to jump at it as close as possible, and I'm sure there will be proper mechanics for that in the game. Now, that's pure speculation. I have no idea, but how can this system exist without it, right? Because you don't want people chasing in nav mode. You want to prevent people from going into nav mode, and that would just ruin piracy altogether. And I think most people in the community understand that having like decent piracy is probably a good thing, but not overpowered on one side or another. So, yeah. Would it be overpowered to be able to jump directly on top of somebody? Maybe as well. I think that's a good topic of conversation one day, but no matter what, when Master Modes comes in, being 30 kilometers from somebody and then being able to get to them within 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever, which is like where we currently are, is not going to be a thing. So everything will have to be addressed, right?
There are so many questions here, and I think it's going to be a real issue when it comes to the persistent universe. I know we can all guess how that will pan out, whether it's interdictions, missiles, or a web mechanic, but whatever the mechanic and the balancing of it, safe to say it's absolutely going to be one of the most important. In my eyes, The game is make or break in how these two modes interact.
Yep. It's true.
Number 4, a high skill ceiling and a low skill floor. Now, what does that mean exactly?
I think this concept here is what people struggle with the most, is having a high skill ceiling is what all the really good pilots want, because they still want to feel not powerful, but they want to feel skillful, and that the amount of work they put in is meaningful, right? And then low skill floor means low barrier to entry. Like, I'm able to get in PvP and compete. Maybe I won't do well against the really, really skillful people, but I can be, bronze and silver league or whatever when it comes to like those type of games and have fun still, right?
Anyone who isn't familiar with the terminology, a high skill ceiling means it takes a truly long time to master flying in Star Citizen. A low skill ceiling in the aspect means someone could simply boot up the game, figure out the basic mechanics of the game, and be crushing veterans immediately. Games like this in the past, in my experience, have a very limited lifespan. When a game has true depth, or to refer to the earlier term, a high skill ceiling, from it branches so many great things. Education opportunities for content creation, the necessity to join organizations.
Nobody cares about content creators in this situation. Focus on the game, right? I want to get better at the game. And where will you go? Yes, you will go to content creators, right? To find out like the best. And what'll happen is players like Virgil, who, many of you may not have even known he had a YouTube channel, because most of the content that's consumed around Star Citizen these days is ship reviews or game development news or just like certain guides, like new player guides, things like that, right? But the opportunity for Avenger 1, Moist Noodle, Virgil, in reality, whoever is the best pilot that is making education-based content, and the game will be able to determine who the best pilots are in the future, I think, with maybe Arena Commander if it's not dead, and probably whatever territory control type of things. The best companies, the best pilots in those companies, if they're making content on how to play the game, they're going to be the biggest creators in the entire Star Citizen space, would be my guess.
For their piloting programs or open flight communities. All of that social interaction, player guides on flight, and more. From a high skill ceiling, multiple playstyles will battle it out for supremacy. Multiple approaches to flying and different methods will constantly go head to head to discover which is best. A journey the entire community will be put through. Games with depth survive the ages, but it's a double-edged sword, which is where the skill floor comes into play. We shouldn't all require climbing a mountain like Everest to learn spaceship combat.
Which is where we are
currently. It should be easy to begin your journey up the mountain. Ultimately, we need the game to be accessible. We need players to be able to play reasonably well without needing to commit a part-time job worth of hours into simply learning how to fly. Between all the ships available to us and all the ways to approach combat, whether it's missiles, repeaters, other weapon types, light fighters,
does Fortnite have a high skill ceiling? It depends on what Fortnite you're talking about. It absolutely has a high skill ceiling, an incredibly high skill ceiling in build. The insane builders in Fortnite, are you kidding me? Yeah, it's got a massive skill ceiling.
Ships, there need to be options for the wider community to all
literal
participate
ceilings, yeah.
and stand a chance. But in my opinion, after playing sophisticated and deep games in comparison to shallow games, a game truly becomes a hobby when there is depth in all things. A small caveat, I'd want the same floor and ceilings as described on all the aspects of the game. Mining, salvaging, to crafting, and so on. Ultimately, I want the journey of mastering flying in Star Citizen to be a long one, where I'm excited on which direction I'm going to take. It's worth noting also, the current live ceiling only exists in a handful of meta fighters, because the flight model is so restricted in other ship classes. Vanguards, Corsairs, Hammerhead pilots, Anvil F8 pilots have very low skill ceilings in comparison to light fighters. So it's important to know when the community is pushing for higher skill ceilings in their feedback, understand that they're, for the most part, referring to small to medium fighters. If you're not interested in sweating it out, fine. Fly other archetypes which don't have those depths, don't have that high of a ceiling, and still enjoy combat.
Interesting. So instead of saying that there should be a low barrier to entry and high skill ceiling throughout the entire combat scope, what he's saying is that he wants light fighters to be the high skill ceiling and everything else to not be. I don't know if I like that personally. I would love for there to be you know what? That's a good way of putting it, Scarlett. Yeah, there should be ships that are more hard to master. Yes. But maybe he's just generalizing there a little bit too much, I guess. Because I would love if medium fighters and heavy fighters had, maybe a different type of, way that you fly, but there could be people that are really good at this. Like I remember people saying and people thinking thinking back to the Captain Burks days before he was Burks. I remember there were conversations of like, this guy is one of the best pilots in a Vanguard, right? Like I remember that being a topic of conversation at one point. And then there's other guys that were like really good at light fighters and stuff like that. I would like for that to be a thing, you know? And like for people to specialize in ships and still have that higher skill ceiling. That's a thing now. Even I'm sure that's a thing now. But to the extent in which it should be, I think we can all argue probably not, right? But yeah, like I want them all to require skill. But I don't know. It's different because the archetypes that they're trying to create is like heavy fighter, lots of armor, lots of guns, medium fighter, a mix of the two of light and heavy, and then light is like these very agile things. So I think I know what he's trying to say is like the controlling of your ship and the the insane agility and movement aspects of light fighters. He wants to keep that skill ceiling there, the really high one. But personally, I would love to see what, the other archetypes would be like. Capital ships, like there should be somebody who specializes in flying capital ships, right? Like if you guys have ever played Rebel Galaxy, that was a cap ship style gameplay with, what would it like broadside firing. So you knew like, all right, I'm taking too much damage on this side, I got to swap over to the other side. And those are skills in themselves too, right? So people that are really good at that, knowing when to do certain things, that's the depth that needs to exist in this game, I think, as well, right? So hopefully that'll be a thing, but we'll have to see. So I'm not really sure what he meant by that, but maybe he'll elaborate at some point in the video, or he'll like DM me or something about it. But that was the one part that I was like, I really hope there's depth for medium and heavy fighters too, because I know personally the light fighters never really resonated with me from a look standpoint or from an anything standpoint. I never was super into them. I was always way more into the I guess the Hornet or the Vanguard or some of the heavier stuff and some of the larger ships. So, I'd like that to be a challenge and something to learn as well.
Number 5. Finally, an attempt on game balance and variety. No more excuses.
But Virgil, this is an alpha. We don't game balance until beta.
I entered the game at patch 3.4. where scouting opposing group squadron compositions was important to the outcome of the fight ahead. Preparing our counter with some of the toughest organizations in the game back then, where small snub fighters were hard countered by EMPs, Vandal heavy hitters were picked apart by live fighters, where coordinating fire with spooled up teammate EMPs were ways to take out opponents, where squadron composition was meta to include 5 to 6 different ships, rather than 2. Ever since that patch, any balance at all has been non-existent because in CIG's eyes, it's been a waste of resources. That argument was made 4 years ago. I've seen skyscrapers built in that time. Enough is enough. It's time for the ships we paid for to take their rightful place in space combat. The Drake ships...
That's actually crazy to think about.
Majority of Anvil, majority of Aegis, Crusade...
Yeah, guys, we're going to balance it, but it's really hard. And then 4 years down the line, it hasn't happened yet is definitely frustrating. And to anybody who's going to make the argument of, skyscrapers don't need server meshing, neither do ship developers. They don't need it either. So the thing that I will be concerned about these comments is that somebody's going to say something like, yeah, you don't balance a game in alpha. Star Citizen isn't a traditional alpha, right? They have a game that people can play, and the game isn't being developed behind the scenes. It's a game that people are playing on a daily basis and that people actually want to play. So balance is always a part of the equation. They do it on a regular basis, and they haven't done it with the ships because it's such a large undertaking for them that they haven't done it properly yet because they're going kind of one thing at a time, has been their, for lack of a better word, and it's not the appropriate word to use in this scenario, is excuse. Because I would imagine that the excuse is their team isn't big enough, to be honest. Because every time we look at, game development conversations around things that are part of the game, you see the same 2 people, 3 people at maximum. And then whenever it's art and ships, Squadron 40, like there's like people everywhere, and I know that there's like a limit of who's willing to go on camera and things like that. But I don't think these teams are very big. So
Data Origin, Vandal ships, and everything else alien in between. It's finally time for the ships to become interesting. And
why do people care so much about Star Citizen when Squadron 42 is the better game? What a first-time chat, dude. Neither of them are a game. Neither of them exist.
Usefulness through weapon types. Actual decision-making with ships.
Why do I have an opinion and nobody agrees with it? Because we're all like normal people and have differing opinions. Neither of them are good games because they don't exist. How can you even say that?
Loadouts and fleet compositions. With Master Mode's implementation,
what was your favorite mission?
Enough.
Yeah.
We've been shooting laser repeaters alone from less than a handful of light fighters for half a decade now.
Oh, God, I know. Can we please have a reason to use, like, more often be using ballistics and stuff? Like, it's crazy. We've been using laser repeaters, maybe sometimes distortion, and occasionally people would do, like, full ballistic builds and stuff, but can we please?
Enough's enough. Number 6.
Yeah, the
absolute
Corsair
control over our ships. With Master Modes, it's imperative we finally restore meaningful control to ships and the ability to arrest.
Hold on. Remember when ballistics had ammo boxes that reload? Yep. And like, if you've ever played a game called Void Crew, I think it's called, you do that. Like, it's you're kind of running a capital ship, and you have to craft ammo in the game. Now, I don't know if that would be a thing in Star Citizen. Probably shouldn't be. Well, maybe crafting ammo elsewhere, but not physically on your ship, and put the ammo boxes into a box in the game. Like, you had an actual engineer that would place the boxes in there and reload the turrets on the ship. It was so cool. Like, why not have that experience in the game? You know what I mean? And every light fighter should have a number of these available to you. Like, come on.
To fly with intent. Over the last 5 years, I cannot count how many fights I've been at near Grimhex, for example, where once the fight is over, myself, often teammates or opponents, have accidentally managed to drift almost 300 kilometers away from the asteroid belt itself.
You don't even have to say Grimhex. Every fight at Jumptown is never above Jumptown anymore. It's 100 kilometers away from Jumptown, but it started at Jumptown. But within 30 seconds, nobody can see the fight in the air anymore. Every fight is like that everywhere. But Jumptown's the best example because Jumptown is typically on a planet or moon that has atmosphere. You know what I mean? So it should be difficult. Like, everybody goes so fast. That's so annoying because then you can't railgun them. Yeah, I know. It's like, hopefully this really, really changes that.
The quantum jump to teammates in the middle of a fight because we've all...
JT is just a meeting spot. It's not meaningful to fight over. Well, we have no place that's meaningful to fight over anymore, especially with the changes to like certain missions and how much people made money. Like, Jumptown is not worth fighting over anymore. But it was for a time. And if it was worth fighting over, it wouldn't just be a meeting place, but that's a different conversation than the actual flight model, right?
Lost our way. And it's important to note, it wasn't always just like this.
Which is why people want to survive. I don't think that... I think I get what your point of view is, that surviving is more important to the fight, but I think it's the way that you survive is by going 1,300 meters per second or 1,200 meters per second, getting your shields back, backing off, coming back, backing off, coming back, backing off, coming back. And then where you end up is because of that. But at the same time, if you're taking all of the combat away from JT, for example, or wherever you're fighting, you're still protecting whoever's on the ground by doing that. So, yeah.
In previous flight models, there were mechanics that kept combat speed slow organically that were disregarded for what we have today. Ultimately,
this is also a really good point of view. The reason to fight is tied to the flight model because the new flight model is trying to solve problems caused by the no meaning to fight. Yes, but there's obvious problems with the flight model as well. Going 1,300 meters per second has always been a problem. And I don't think we can ignore that issue. You know, the speed, I think, has always been an issue. But I absolutely respect your opinion on the no meaning to fight. I think that is, if it's not the most important thing, it is certainly a very, very, very close second.
to be
needing
to be fixed again by the implementation of master modes. But finally, with meaningful control, we're able to use stations and asteroids for line of sight against incoming fire. We can plan fights around terrain for advantage, and the environment will become an important aspect of the combat ahead.
True.
Number 7, sticking to the design intent.
Lamau.
A natural path which I've learned from
CIG sticking to anything. Lamau.
4 different models in Star Citizen is that the flight model handles when it's introduced is nothing representative of how it will be handled 3 or 6 months down the line. Competitive playstyles will go head-to-head. The weak playstyles sink to the bottom, and the most competitive playstyles will rise to the top. Wiggling, backstrafing, resetting fights for shields, easy retreats, heavy jousting, abusing hit registration, the list.
Resetting fights for shields, I hope, is maybe still a thing, but maybe like a skillful thing, maybe? I don't know. One thing that I've always noticed about PvPers is, why didn't you just die to me? Is always something that they get mad about, right? I've played plenty of games with PvP in them before. Why didn't you just let me kill you? Why did you run? Oh, you're a pussy. You ran. What a loser. Do you see this running loser? Did they live? Then they won. Right? So I that is the only part right now that I will not like stand for, because nobody should just die, especially in a game that has permadeath, right?
Never stops. Human beings in PvP specifically are going to push this model to its limits. My largest issue with the CIG development approach has always been the constant reinventing of the wheel. Once Master Modes is here, I don't want to wait for the next flight model to inevitably replace it. Instead, it's time for incremental fixes to unintended results of the design. As these issues become prevalent, I'm looking forward to them getting resolved as they are discovered. Protecting the design intent. I'm hoping for incremental changes. There's plenty of flight models that have been lost to history in this game that could have been great gameplay had their issues been fixed without the need of reinventing the wheel.
I mean, yeah, maybe, but don't you think that they probably sat down and said, could we fix this without reinventing the wheel? And then the answer on their end was no. I think it's hard from our perspective to truly understand the ins and outs of what developing the video game actually is. And, you know, the 3.4 model would have been good if you only did this. But what if they couldn't, or what if they did that, it would have a knock-on effect on this? And so this is one that I probably won't have much to say on, because how can we? We're not in the room with them, you know what I mean?
Number 8, head tracking. Now this one is personal to me. For myself, peak Star Citizen is found in the immersion and controlling your camera using head tracking peripherals. It's the peak cockpit experience. But Master Modes dictates how useful this is. When a ship can rate, or in other words, pitch and yaw so easily, then the necessity to use head tracking diminishes. But with limited rating or pitch and yaw, the need to look into your planned turn increases. I can't express how cool this is, and it's very unique.
It is cool, but I think we're like going in the deep end of needing certain peripherals
It's just a handful of games.
to enjoy the game.
If the ship, however, can turn faster than the hand tracking, then there's no need to it.
Wow, that turn. Holy, did this guy just get dominated? Like completely outskilled. I need to watch that again. That was sick.
If the ship, however, can turn faster than the...
He knew where he was going, so he kind of like spun and turned to where he was going and was instantly... That was sick.
Hand tracking, then there's no need to it. If you haven't bought a head tracker already,
Wow.
buy one. Start looking into your turns as you make them, and tell me it isn't the coolest thing in gaming. In my opinion, my strong opinion, protect head tracking, smart and balanced turn rates, please. If we can turn too
Maybe this one's a
easily
little
and it's
over
too
my head.
accessible, it kills that necessity for head tracking. Keep in mind too, there is some camera options in the game options in regards to
The camera options are kind of scuffed in the game, but yeah, maybe they can improve them.
simulating head tracking without buying a device. Number 9, and my last point, which I truly think we can all appreciate here, fun for all playstyles.
Also, who on earth thinks Star Citizen is PvP? I really find that hard to understand. Most areas are kind of a free-for-all where anything can happen. There might be punishments for you attacking another player, but that's what they mean. Those are player versus player engagements. They could be. The opportunity for PvP exists in 99% of the game world. If you think Star Citizen is PvE, you're lost. Okay, just sharing my opinion. I don't understand it. Imagine wanting to be in jail, then don't get caught. There's ways to remove your crime stat. So if you're new to the game and just trying to understand, I'll try and help you. 99% of the game world, combat can happen, whether you want it to or not.
The flight model and master modes does not belong purely to the light fighter community. It doesn't belong purely to the arena commander community or the PvP community, but the entire Star Citizen community as a whole. Multi-crew races, PvE predominant players,
You're a
and
concierge?
PvP, light
We
fighters,
know.
medium fighters, heavy
We know.
fighters, and even heavier. Everyone needs their share, and at least every playstyle should be competitive with one another. Every option needs
Concierge gives you 0 weight, in your opinion, just so you know.
to be relatively viable. Not to say one of the options couldn't be pushed to a further limit or have an edge on another, but we don't want to see a ship archetype or size, combat gameplay loop sit dormant unused anymore. Nor do you want to see, for example, one ship archetype standing above all the rest. Combat can finally be competitive and welcoming for all the playstyles.
Yeah, like, don't we want some rock, paper, scissors, man? Jeez.
So, in summary, I want, myself, meaningful fleet-scale battles of epic proportions, immersive
I want turrets to dominate light fighters. Right?
surrounding
like that,
experiences
maybe? I
from
don't
the
know.
cockpit view, balance to reintroduce more ships to the competitive scene, meaningful control restored back to our ships, incremental game design, and competitiveness and fun for all types of combat. I welcome people to agree, and more importantly, I welcome you all to disagree with my feedback, because that's how we will all find a middle ground between everyone. I'm open to
Aw.
being wrong. I don't have all the answers, and we all just need to hash it out. Just speak up and be transparent with the position you are speaking from. Are you a new player with an initial impression? Are you a bitter veteran wanting what used to be? Are you interested in a competitive, fast-paced combat? Describe who you are, describe what you like and dislike, and go and type it in the feedback threads. The next video of this series, I'll break down on the specifics of what I think about master modes, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you think in the comments. Fly safe or don't, and I'll catch you guys next time.
I think that video was pretty good. I think it was pretty balanced, and yeah, I thought it was, no bashing on anybody, just talking about the game and what he wants and all that stuff. So let me link you guys to Virgil, because there you go. And I thought it was, no drama, no BS, just this is what I want out of the flight model or whatever. You don't have to agree with everything. I certainly didn't, right? And man, I thought it was a really good video. So nice, Virgil. I know he worked really hard on it too. He said he worked mega, mega hard on it. Virgil is drama? Yeah, but the drama wants to be in the game, and yeah, there is no drama in the game.